Hey, Curtis here with KTF, and we're going to be doing our tournament recap and talk about a little bit of upcoming events. There's a lot of things going on, so let's just jump into it. So this is for May 26th to June 1st of what occurred. There were 11 tournaments that transpired. If you want to just jump to a specific tournament that happened, use the chapter links below to kind of briefly talk about it. First up was the ICF Week 9, which is on May 26th. The numbers continued to boost up. I didn't expect this week to have a number boost. It went from 122 to 140, and they were able to cap out at that 1,000, and they didn't have any rollover. So someone must have just donated just to make it the nice round number. And they were really good games. Kind of the big noteworthy things was Conflict 220 was on just a giant roll. I was watching his stream as well as the ICFC at the time. It was very interesting because he even noted that he tries not to watch players that he's getting ready to fight because he doesn't want to psych himself out. So essentially he's saying that he wants to trust his own game rather than look for any exploitative natures that's going on with those players. And I really like that kind of mindset of just going into it, that you feel so confident with kind of your own mixes that you're just going to go in and you're just going to play your game and just get ready to adapt, rather than a lot of times people have a preconceived notion of, okay, I saw him do this a lot against this player, so I'm going to try to exploit that, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I like that he just went in just saying, no, I'm going to go and play my game. Another big noteworthy thing is Mac and Cuddlecore. Usually when they go off against each other, Cuddlecore has been winning recently, so it was kind of good to see that Mac was able to take it over Cuddlecore. Kind of the mystery player Grape. Everyone was joking of who Grape may have been, but from my understanding, we never found out. But my favorite one was Jody the Grape. That was a really good guess, and actually for a while it had me going there. Everything else, a very typical ICFC. I'm shocked that the numbers keep going, and next week they're going to be doing, I think, exhibitions, which I don't think are going to be tied to the Tekken World Tour, but we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Next, we had the Romanjelly's Colosseum. This was their number 5, in which they just threw in $100, and it was a $50, $30, $20 split. They were really able to pull in 30 people. I was actually amazed at the amount of numbers that they were able to pull in. The big noteworthy things was the finals with Jumanji and Bibeas. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. In which Jumanji just turned it on, essentially, the last game. And it just was, it was beautiful and spectacular, just disaster of what Yoshi can do if you're just not prepared and you kind of get in your opponent's mind. Just really solid play. Everyone else has super solid showing. FDX, Donnell, El Negro, Chenzo all have good, and of course we keep seeing Ho pop up. But overall, Romanjelly is really good, and I believe that this is going to be more of a constant tournament series now that the Romanjelly kind of got it all figured out. So hopefully next week we're going to see a couple changes. Next, we had the Throwdown Thursday. I don't know why the entries dropped so much, but they were still able to raise, $80. Mac, again, is breaking that curse. Not only did he have that upset earlier versus Cuddlecore, but he's also now winning a tournament, which it's been about a couple weeks since he actually was the winner rather than being stuck in that second place. This tournament was locked to East Coast and Midwest, so if you were, West Coast, that's why you're not seeing a lot of the names. Alpha had a really great showing, and Armaku as well. Not a whole lot. Wasn't able to catch it all, but I don't know why the entries kind of dipped. Maybe it's just a coastal thing, but there's. This is a great opportunity again, and I know I said this previously, that these are phenomenal talent, and with such a small amount of entries, this is where you're going to get really good practice in, even if you're not expected to win. And then, of course, always just donate to the Matcherino for the top players with the standard 60-30-10. So the Philly Gulag, I've been getting actually conflicting information every once in a while, in which on Matcherino for a while there were 2 actual listings of this. It looked like there was supposed to be the team tournament, which we've talked about previously, but it'll also look like there was a single tournament, but nowhere could I find any information of the single tournament. So I'm just going to talk about the team tournament. The team tournament, the entries have increased, which is good. They've always kind of stick to a 50-50, which is a little odd, but hey, it works. And this is being played on PS4 in the northeastern kind of region of the US. And kind of why the PS4 is a little interesting, as we'll talk about a little bit later, that PlayStation the company is the main sponsor and owner of the Evo series, that all their games are going to be played on PlayStation 4, which we're going to have a whole separate video talking about that, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But I still really like that the Philly Gulag is kind of the standout of running 2v2s. I think it's a very interesting format with the Waseda style. If you don't know what the Waseda style is, go check it out. But it's just very interesting. It adds a layer of complexity, especially of selecting who should play first and how should we counterpick based on a lot of different variables, especially because I didn't see any character locks between the players. I like this format, and I actually want to see more experiments with other formats rather than just standard double elimination, because there are some inherent issues with double elimination, but that's for a different day. Iron Fist Friday. So this is where I was getting a lot of conflicting information. Some weeks I talked about, some weeks I didn't. Sometimes it was just straight up canceled. This was the final Iron Fist Friday for whatever personal reasons. I didn't actually see why. They were essentially handing it off, but they pulled in a huge amount of entries to kind of do the last kickoff, and they raised tons of money. But as we see, a lot of the standard names were able to make the top 8. Shadow, Joe Crush, Jumanji, FDX, and Pepper Beef Too Spicy, who's usually our offline kind of competitor. This is the first time that I think I've even talked about him for the online series, so it's good that he's getting ready to compete, and he may just be getting ready for the upcoming leagues with the Tekken World Tour and the Evo series. But they were able to pull in tons of cash, as well as have a really good distribution for the top 4. And if I remember correctly, I've been hearing other hosts, because this was held on Friday. TriTech, I believe, is essentially taking up this time slot, especially because the people at TriTech on Tuesdays, which that's when it used to be held, are now doing the Games Workshop, which we'll talk about later. But Iron Fist Friday, I think, set a really good precedent for future tournament hosts, and hopefully we can keep this time slot going, keep it up. So to benchmark other Friday tournaments, I'm going to use these numbers for the upcoming weeks to see if that transition worked out, or if this was just a final, send off. So now this kind of flew under the radar, and of course, as I was doing research, this came up. Tekken 7 City Beatdown. Only 17 people brought in $55. I was a little. It seemed to be kind of more of a regional centric tournament series, and this was. They've held tournaments before, but a very small number, so I think this is kind of an up-and-comer. They already are registered on Matcherino, which is a really good thing to already have, to try to bring in more money and more just kind of community awareness. And kind of the big players that stand out were El Negro, Armaku, Cora, and Turtle BS that were able to make it in the top 8. This is another prime example. If you're getting ready for kind of that tournament scene or how that works, this is the right size for you, because it's not as big of a time commitment of waiting in between rounds, and especially the kind of logistical headache it is to figure out who's setting up rooms, how to set it up and run it, reporting, and all that stuff. Essentially, once you start getting over 24 and 32, that's when it becomes a major headache, even from a player standpoint. There's no reason that these numbers shouldn't jump to kind of the high 20s, mid 30s within the next few weeks. But this may also be a monthly tournament, as this was the 3rd one, and it looked like they were running monthlies. So there's a couple tournaments happening at the end of the month, and this is the one that we're hopefully going to set on our calendar. And then there was the kind of fun tournament, the Ladies Night. This was the season 2. Again, this was a monthly. They're running it for 5 months, and this was the 2nd month that they ran it, which is a double elimination female only tournament, in which it only had 13 entries, which was a little lower than I believe even last month, but they were able to raise a lot of money, and the payout structure is pretty interesting. So 50% of the entire pot is given to a donation of the winner of the tournament's choice, and then the winner takes in 30% of the total pot, and then second place 15 and 5. Was able only to catch kind of the top 3 being played, in which Swagmaster was really good and Cora had a really great run, and Pit Viper unfortunately like just went on a tear. And that's kind of what Chloe players do. When Chloe's on, it's just on, and that's essentially what happened. um, Other than that, really great games. Another noteworthy is No Way Beauty. I know recently, even on her Twitter, she's been complaining about her play of like underperforming, and making a top 5, I think hopefully is going to boost her confidence enough to keep competing. Swagmaster has even said most of her time is being dealt playing Apex Legends or whatever the hip FPS is, and this is essentially her monthly that she plays the game. But really great showing that you're able to keep your skills sharp that much with kind of huge gaps in play style, and hopefully it gives time for everyone else to kind of catch up. But especially if you are interested in the ladies night, you need to sign up for it, you need to support it. Next we have the Iron Sherpa, the number 6. This is a point-based league that's happening, so all these players are accumulating points. As we're approaching July, I'll compile the current listings. I need to backtrack a lot to make all those calculations, but I can tell you that we have some standout names: FeedX, Silence, Shinblade, Turtle BS, and Sam have all consistently made the top 8, so they should be in pretty good point standings. I think Silence usually sits around 7, so does Shinblade. Sam is usually around 3 to 5. But we also have a player we haven't seen in a while, at least I haven't seen in a while, is Toxic Toro. Not only in this tournament, but in another tournament he's coming up. And if you haven't heard the name, way back when, I guess his claim to fame was kind of beating Punko when Punko was Punko. When Punko was just on his Akuma tear, when Akuma was slightly overpowered. I think he's getting ready to enter in tournament series again, or at least that's what I understood of people kind of doing a crosstalk. So hopefully we're going to see him again. The entries seem to go down from the last tournament, and that could be because of inherently of how the tournament point structure is. If a few players get a lot of points early on, it decentivizes players to continue playing. And so we may see kind of a dip, and then as we approach the finals, then might have another spike of kind of the last chance qualifiers, if you can think of it that way. But we'll talk about kind of league and point systems at a different time, in which then the finals are going to be happening in July, which I'm looking forward to the July finals. Next, we have Cyber Stun City. This is another tournament in which Mac was able to break that curse, get first place. Alpha sitting around where he usually sits, and a lot of names that I'm just not familiar with. 16 people, so it went down, but they were still able to raise over $100, pay out to the top 2. And a lot of the numbers, most likely again, might be kind of that regional lock in which more players want to participate. However, because we're now focusing on trying to reduce lag and other issues, and especially timing issues if you're across time zones, that could be a reason why these numbers are a little low. But other than that, it was a totally fine tournament. And they are trying to do kind of not a pure league, in which they play also a variety of different fighting games, but that's why there is kind of that range of different dates that are occurring at the very bottom with the Cyberstone City. But they've been very consistent of running kind of weeklies, and again, along with this and the city battle, which we talked about previously, if you're looking to get into tournaments, this is actually a very good one. And so as long as you're in the East Coast, you need to participate and get that practice in. And then IronMANE, so they finished up their monthly tournament. How IronMANE does it is he generally says, okay, we're running 4 tournaments this month. So typically at the start of the month, and they run 4, and then he takes about a month off. I think this time, he hasn't published anything yet. He only spoke about it during the stream, in which he's planning on doing something like 1 event in June, and then starting up in July, he's going to do the 4 tournaments in 4 weeks. His numbers stayed up from the previous weeks. That's good. So I think that's a good marketing thing. He still ran a super smooth tournament. which was really good. And he actually does pretty good crosstalk with the chat, especially as a solo kind of commentator, host, and tournament organizer, all that fun stuff. He did a really great job. And TY was just on another tear. He had some very smart character swaps depending on the player. So he's essentially doing the research of what players seem to be weak against certain characters, and he just kept swapping it up, and it just continually seemed to work. So TY, I mean, I started watching at the top 8, starting with one of TY's first games, and he was just playing super solid. He was making the right picks. This is where we have Toxic Toro again breaking a top 8, so all of a sudden he decides to start playing and he's making top 8s in the tournaments that he's going to. And then we have El Negro, FDX, Armaku, and then Fear of Silence continuing on along with B Rich and TY. This is essentially where we thought IronMANE numbers should be. Hoping, and he already said that once he gets to 32 entries fairly regularly, that he's going to look for secondary help to help host and manage the tournament. I think that's a very smart thing to do. And I like that he has that forward thinking of, you know, now I can do it. And sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming, but he knows when to start asking for help and where that help is needed. Super smart. Really great tournament series. And so I'm looking forward to kind of the one-off that's coming up, and then also the next tournament series in July with the IronMANE. And then the last tournament, which occurred last night, was Fighting Games Workshop. And this was the first tournament that was part of the Tekken Online Challenge North America. So not only did they get the Games Workshop dollars, but these players started accumulating points for the Tekken Online Challenge. They were able to raise $135 in between Games Workshop and then the Match Arena, and then the split as normal. The numbers seem pretty good. They're still hoping to get to 64, and that's kind of the next benchmark to really up the amount of points that Games Workshop or for the Tekken World Tour is able to have. But a really great showing. Shadow came back from the loser side and was just doing really great of not only playing Claudio but also playing Anna, and just going on a tear. Even when we just said that TY just was doing phenomenal character switches, Shadow still came back and overtook him. But TY and Mac overall for the week was really good, while also continual showings from FDX, Joe Crush, and El Negro of constantly making the top 8. How I understood it with the Tekken Online Challenge is that every week they're able to do points. I could be wrong, because originally I heard hosts were only to do it once a month. So we're going to see if they still accumulate points in the Games Workshop or not. I just felt it was weird that this was the first event, and I didn't see too much marketing done of saying this is our first, you know, point event. And then quickly, the tournament rankings for kind of dollar per entry, we have them ranked, in which the ratio of $24.26 down to about $2.87 was the breakdown. Ladies Night pulled in tons of money, and this is even after minusing out the donations that 50% of the pot went to donations with those numbers. Iron Fist Friday was the kickoff. ICFC generally is in kind of the top 3 with this ratio, and then it just kind of goes down from there. Fighting Games Workshop, even though it's one of the lower end of financial gain, this was a big tournament to start accumulating points. But this is a typical week for online Tekken tournaments, and we'll see how that continues to kind of creep up. Just for reference, typically when tournaments were done offline, the ratio would look about $10-ish, because people are putting in $10 and then that creates the pot. So per person is $10. So the average kind of communal pot is 10. So that's essentially kind of the average that you're looking at. And of course, with inflation and all that stuff, we want to increase those numbers. But that's kind of the tournament recap. I also talked very briefly about the Tekken Online Challenge. They've posted the numbers very similarly to the online beta of the breakdown of how many entries or what type of event and the amount of points that are awarded based on where you end in that tournament. And so after just that first event, all we have is that Shadow's in first place, followed by TY, Mac, VDX, Bing Cheng, and Joe Crush. This is just one event. These numbers are going to change dramatically. But what we saw from the last beta, that essentially you need at least 100 if it's just a month's time span. And I need to see how long they're running it. I haven't gone through all the literature yet to tell you an approximate number. So expect those next week along with updated Tekken World Tekken Online Challenge. And make sure that you actually register, because some of these names aren't on the official registration list, just as a tip. And then upcoming events, Digital Havoc is coming back with a double elimination. It looks like they're beginning a league play, but they're still trying to figure out some details. As they know it's point based, but they don't know what the ending prize of the tournament is going to be. That starts on June 3rd, and I think it's running weekly, but I could be wrong again. Some details were still being sorted out when I was doing research on that. Also, we have another offline event that's starting up in Utah, June 5th, Ringside Rumble. It looks like they mainly specialize in Street Fighter V, but now they're branching out and adding Tekken. And so that's an offline, but they are also going to be broadcasting on Twitch at Get Good FGC. I did not see a Smash GG or a challenge link, only the Matcherino, but even if it's an offline event, they're using Matcherino to try to raise funds. So that should be a little bit interesting. Black and Blue, we talked about this before, Jacksonville, Florida. They're starting up June 5th. This has been planned for over a month now, starting with a $200 pop bonus to start bringing in more competitors in that offline scene. And then the really big news, we got a lot of information of the Evo Tournament Series that's being sponsored and owned by PlayStation now. The first Tekken event is being held on June 12th as online. It's PS4, it's online only, and this is part of their Evo Community Series. I have 3 entire websites that I need to read through all the rules to really get a better grasp of what it is, but I wanted to get you some information out now of what to expect within the next 2 weeks, that the tournament is going to begin June 12th and on PS4. Even though on one of the pages that said Tekken 7 would be on PC, but I saw no registration for PC. So that's interesting. My best guess is that regional tournaments are held on Sony PlayStation 4, but once they start doing internationally, because they're looking at just winners regionally, that it might be PC because connectivity issues might be a little bit better. But knowing that it's owned by, Sony PlayStation, who knows if they want to use another platform other than their own. But like I said, I'm going to read a little bit more into it before I feel super confident to criticize or say what's good. But just know, June 12th, first tournament with the Community Series. And then the last thing is, I know we've talked about Secret Garden. They're making their pools already. I think they're capped at 72 was the final number. So if you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, to check it out, as it should be a really big, just awesome event. 4-4 always does outstanding competitions. So if you're in that area, check it out. If not, try to tune in on Twitch to actually see what's up. So that's all I have for you this week on KTF of the tournament recap. I'll probably have a separate video talking about the Tekken Online Challenge as well as the Evo series, which I'm hoping is coming out later this week, at least by next week. But until then, we're going to see you guys next time, and just start thinking about what you're fighting for.